Hello, my name is Mark Mosley, and the research critique I'm doing my article on is association between physical activity and teacher-reported academic performance among fifth graders in Shanghai, a quantile regression. And it informs readers about many studies that have proven the positive relationships between adequate physical activity and the effects it has on academic performance. I'm sure that most of us have heard about the correlation between physical activity and academic performance, but really don't have any evidence to back it up. This actually takes a closer look and also talks about the possible reliability flaws and transitions into the clearly stated problem that's guiding the research study. It says, we attempt to fill a research gap by exploring whether this association differs by intensity of physical activity and varies across students with different strata of academic performance. Given our more objective measure of students' academic performance and a more in-depth look at the analysis of the data, the study is likely to contribute new insights for those who wonder how much of the child's time should actually be given to physical activity. We're informed about the popular belief that physical activity promotes concentration, awareness, improves academic achievement, and this has been proven by many researchers. We're also informed about research efforts that have contradicted this theory. The authors bring up some thoughts about possible outliers that can affect these studies and question the correlation between the intensity level of physical activity in direct relation to the academic performance in hopes to understand the possible associations and find the correct concrete answers. Ultimately, it was conveyed that the results of the study would benefit in the decision-making process of what amount of physical activity would best benefit students' academic performance. I personally feel the study was formed using the quantitative approach due to the data, the sample size, the questionnaires, and also the decision-making motive of the story. Although the term quantitative was actually not in the article, the term quantile regression was frequently used, and I understand that as a form of data prediction, proving the quantitative status. The reason that I chose this article was because I was interested in the subject. I'd heard it several times before, and I believed it without really much study, personal study myself, and I was really interested in the information that a study like this would reap. The research questions that helped direct the study were not explicitly stated in the article, nor were they in question form. The first thought wonders if demographics, economic situations, or parental education have a bigger effect than believed, and some of these things aren't really measurable. The other could be if the intensity level relates to the academic performance. I felt the objective way to go about this was to try and gain more understanding and acquire a concrete answer, and I feel it was best conveyed when stating our findings would be helpful in planning school policies on students' time allocation between physical activities and academics, which I feel would benefit the Chinese school system and their instructional day scheduling decisions. This was by Zhang, one of the conductors of this study. As for the results of the article, it concluded that there were no significant evidence proving that a high level of physical activity would weaken students' academic performance scores. However, students who haven't reached an adequate level of academic performance could experience negative effects if omitting physical activity and should be active even if it's a lower level of physical activity. So this is not necessarily, it needs to be a high, medium, low level, but they need this exposure to trigger the benefits that we're looking for. Some findings that I found to be interesting include the variables cross-reference and school effects. Home learning had a negative connotation with academic performance in comparison to the positive effects extracurricular activities had on academic performance. We're given data such as there was a statistically significant and positive association between IPAs, APSs, and between MI IPAs and APSs if the students were in the lower half of the APS distribution, like 10 to 25%. And while this was not the case anymore for students who belong to the top 50% of the APS distribution in our sample, I believe this, among other similar data explanations, conveyed that the lower the student is academically, the greater the impact the physical activity has on their academic performance scores. The higher the student is academically, the lesser the impact physical activity has on their academic performance scores. The closer to the average the student was, the more negative no activity was versus positive with at least minimal physical activity. Ultimately, the answer to the question, does the time allocation between physical activity and academic performance correlate to each other, is no. The article concluded that there was no significant evidence proving that a high level of physical activity would weaken the student's academic performance. To add on, it was conveyed that the results of the study would benefit in the decision-making process of what amounts of physical activity would best benefit students' academic performance. And the article stated that cutting physical activity times in school could hurt the scholastic performance among those students who were already at higher risk for dropping out due to inadequate APSs. In my own words and understanding, the amount of time or the energy that one puts into physical activity will not affect their academic performance. However, no physical activity will hinder the academic struggling students, whilst including physical activity outlets within the school will either not affect or positively affect the academic performance regarding the minimal, complacent, and maximal exertions. I do agree that the research study doesn't answer the questions that were presented with aiding the direction of the research was headed to, and I'm confident with the results and the discoveries. I did feel like it really dug into different aspects to really try to avoid any errors or threats to the research results, and I felt the outcomes made sense, and I feel that personally being active makes me more alert and helps me maintain energy and overall focus, which leads to more learning gains. I know that if I'm sitting at a desk for a couple days, I really start to feel it. So this is just feeding into the beliefs I already had. If I were to recreate this study for an additional attempt, I truly would edit a couple of things that I think would help make the research study even more useful and gear it towards its actual purpose. First, I wouldn't focus so much on the many variables and factors such as demographics or other similar categorical components. I don't feel like the cross-reference method was completely necessary. I do think the important information to know that pertains to the study most beneficially includes but is not limited to your age, weight, health, and breakfast. And I understood the purpose of this study to be a decision-making strategy that would help decipher the importance of physical activity within the school day and its correlation to academic performance. Sending a questionnaire home doesn't seem to prove much to me. If the neighborhood is rough, a child is lazy, if a child plays a sport, if it's more interested in television, video games, homework, chances are they really won't be adding much to data realistically. If there's any other factor inhibiting a child to be active, they're likely to make the questionnaire up or write something down just randomly to avoid trouble. And I feel this creates a validity and a reliability issue or even a possible bias. Furthermore, the purpose I thought with the association of physical activity within the school day. To clearly convey my point, I would make the study more observational in school, leaving outside factors alone. I would ideally see the teachers completing the questionnaires for the students while the students are actually taking part in the physical activities. Some classes would do 15, some would do 30, and some would do none. And the classes could easily be compared and the information would for sure be accurate in terms of the time at least. I would then consider factoring in bedtimes and wake-up time because I feel the amount of sleep you get also plays a big role. It definitely does for me, and in the past, the students that I've been exposed to, you can tell when they don't get a good night's sleep. At that point, I feel like you could factor in other components such as household income, parents' work schedule, after-school activities, and other similar items due to the effect that it may have on the rest or the soreness they may feel that impacts their ability to be fully active. Then I would test their academic achievement and compare the different groups along with the level of physical activity done or not done. I would keep the sampling method due to the fact that I feel it was the best way to gain data from many parts of Shanghai without much room for bias, if any at all. I would keep the questionnaire and the other data collected. I just think that I really would put I would pull out the extra fluff unless I felt like it was necessary to do so at a point later on in the process. And I know that in the case of Shanghai, getting permission to have kids be more active when it seems to not really be the norm or seems frowned upon, it would be quite difficult. But if they want answers, they will research and it will be allowed. I think the levels of intensity would definitely keep in study, and it was important and interesting to find out if the amount of physical activity contributed to academic achievement, and as we discovered, it did not. Only the complete lack of it did. I would also keep the health information, the gender, and age as part of the study because I do believe that those elements greatly affected the outcome that may be found. For this study, I felt like it was overall well done and well thought out. I don't think I would delete anything before or at the starting of it, at the beginning. If certain answers are found, I feel like certain information could be deleted and not factored in. I would very likely even delete the questionnaire aspect of it if smartphones or technology was accessible to where a band or calculate your level of physical activity yourself based on that app. I do feel like those results would be more accurately obtained and would avoid the hypothesizing and quantile regression procedures and calculations. I did enjoy the article, and maybe not compiling the critique as much, but I do feel like I'm walking away much more prepared to critique articles and look at it through an eye of an educator and someone who's actually studying curriculum. So I do believe this has been beneficial for me, and I have actually already shared some of the findings with my coworkers at my elementary school. So I hope you enjoyed this critique, and thank you.